Hello, and welcome to today's video concerning feral hog management in Virginia. This tutorial will begin with a crash course in human dimensions, and in using feral hog management as an example case, we will discuss the importance of the application of social sciences to successful management and behavior change, exploring topics like stakeholder engagement and community-based social marketing. Understanding these concepts will hopefully help to guide you when it comes to addressing the public in future conservation matters. To start things off, let's define human dimensions. According to leading expert Michael J. Manfredo, human dimensions is a field of study that applies the social sciences to examine human-wildlife relationships, and, in doing so, provides information that contributes to effective wildlife conservation efforts. Basically, we are attempting to look at what people think and do, try to understand why, and incorporate that into our decision-making process. Think of it as a natural system. In order to have effective management in your native ecosystems, you first have to understand the animals inhabiting those areas, understand why they are choosing the areas that they do, define what resources they are choosing to use, and examine how they interact with other species. All this critical information goes into developing strategies you as managers choose to implement. In gathering this information, we can use it to inform things like private lands conservation and policy interventions, understanding wildlife conservation constituents in conflict, and finding novel ways to bridge the research implementation gap. To effectively address these problems, human dimensionists incorporate social sciences, or particular areas of study that relate to human behavior and society. They offer analytic tools to establish knowledge that can explain or predict patterns of human behavior, providing insight that is vital to the success of conservation efforts. This gives us a better look at the constituents we are dealing with, incorporating a wide range of disciplines, such as psychology, which looks deeper into the mind and human behavior at an individual level. Using feral hogs as an example, why people would incorporate feral hogs into the landscape, and what costs and benefits they weighed mentally in making that decision. Secondly, sociology, which looks at behavior in the context of a group, delving into topics like development, structure, and functioning of society. For example, was the decision to bring feral hogs a product of this person's social group? Was it a social norm in society that was encouraged by peers? What about that society made these people vulnerable to persuasion? There's also political science, which analyzes policymaking strategies of these societies, providing insight into the institutional dimensions of conservation issues. So how are these landowners able to transport feral hogs into Virginia? How are they utilizing the law to allow them to legally hunt feral hogs? How are they playing the system to facilitate this game species? Another would be anthropology, which focuses on the development of human societies and cultures. So how has the local culture grown and developed? What aspects of this culture have encouraged this type of thinking? What wildlife value orientations have been bred in this environment to produce such societal norms as to incorporate such an invasive and destructive species into a native habitat? Finally, geography, which relates the distribution of human populations, resources, land use, and industries across the landscape. So what about Virginia itself and the structure of its landscape allows the facilitation of this species? How will it affect business, agriculture, and human communities as the feral hog issue festers? While these are the most common social sciences applied to conservation, there exists an entire suite of other disciplines that you can use depending on which is most salient to the issue. After identifying how you wish to approach the problem with what social science aspects seem most applicable, you must look at who your message needs to get to. This is where you need to identify important stakeholders, or any person who significantly affects or is significantly affected by wildlife management. These stakeholders can take form of local governments, special interest groups, private landowners, and even local residents. To successfully engage stakeholders in conservation management, it is necessary to follow a series of logical steps. First, evaluate who is affected or can affect management. Second, understand stakeholder views. Third, seek common goals underlying competing stakes. And fourth, Communicate and learn from stakeholders. There is a wide variety of stakeholder engagement strategies, each increasing in magnitude of stakeholder participation and responsibility. At the lower end of the scale, we have authoritative strategies, which do not involve stakeholders at all, often alienating them. Next, there is passive receptive, which means that managers keep eyes and ears open, welcoming input from stakeholders, but not actively seeking it. Inquisitive is where stakeholders seek engagement to inform management, but this can lead to unsolicited input. Then there's intermediary strategies, which create more of a dialogue with a two-way communication between stakeholder groups, generally keeping opposing viewpoint groups separated. There's then transactional, which puts all stakeholder groups together and engages both sides of the argument simultaneously. And finally, in co-management, the stakeholders have just as much power and responsibility as the managers. In reality, it is best to use a mixture of these strategies to effectively engage every part of your constituency. Stakeholder engagement techniques include information dissemination, public houses, public meetings, comment solicitation and surveys, workshops, focus groups and task forces, group planning and decision-making, and advisory committees, and negotiated agreements.